Good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee for Capital Expenditures. Today is February 12th, 2026. And first order of business, I just want to welcome everyone to this group. I know it takes a lot of time and effort on your parts to participate, and I want to thank you for your volunteer to be here. We have a lot of material to go over, as you'll find out soon, and I did want to introduce myself. My name is Paul Payne. I'm the budget director for the city of St. Louis. And as such, in that role, I also serve as chair of the city's capital committee. And with us also today is Richard Bradley. He's the president of the Board of Public Service for the city. That department is in charge of engineering for the city, managing projects and such, and keeping an inventory of our city's capital needs. And so we'll be going over those materials shortly. One thing I did want to do is point out, if you haven't reviewed some of the materials that were sent out earlier, you can. I was going to pull up a couple on screen just to share with you if I could. And we'll talk about a few of these right now. So share. One of the documents I would recommend you take a look at is the capital improvements budget guide. And this is in addition to the capital budget itself, but this is just sort of a shorter version of that, which illustrates what the capital budget process, how the capital budget process works, how we allocate funds, and what's in the current FY26 capital budget. It talks about the capital planning process. As also, and this is one thing I'd like you to consider when we talk about capital projects, within the ordinances of the capital budget, we emphasize what type of things that we look at when we try to evaluate whether, given our limited funding, what projects to provide funding for. And some of those you can see on this very second page of this guide. Capital improvements that foster St. Louis goal of preserving and improving municipal buildings. Foster fiscal stability and soundness, things that foster its infrastructure. Also, if there's any savings from operations, those are the kind of things that we try to maximize efficiencies in operations from capital investment and indoor operational safety. We also, of course, have to pay for certain obligations under our lease debt service agreements that we have outstanding, which you'll see in the capital budget. There's a significant portion of those. And then we also, as Rich can explain, when it comes to streets and bridges, we receive a lot of funds from the federal government and through the state, which we try to maximize matching funds for. And these are projects that may be paid for every dollar we put in, we get $4 back. And so that is something, obviously, that's getting bigger bang for the buck, that we want to maximize those opportunities. Of course, we're also required to fund certain mandated obligations, particularly with the ADA compliance and those type of things, which you'll see in the plan. And then, of course, we've got a big, long list of equipment replacements. Rolling stock, as we refer to it, is basically our service trucks and things like that we want to be able to fund. But this document has a lot of that description in there, and it tells you where we've allocated for the current fiscal year, and it just talks about the budget process. So if you haven't, it's online. I also circulated out to you. So if you haven't looked at that, I would do so. And before getting into the actual other documents I want to get into, we are going to be planning on meeting for the next several weeks at this same time. Hopefully, it's a good time for you all at 5:30 on Thursdays. So I'm trying to limit the meetings to an hour and a half tops, so we don't go over. Occasionally, depending on the subject matter, sometimes we might be a little short, but the future meetings, I do expect to have other departments coming in and presenting on some of the subject matter. Next week on the 19th, we do have our first one is going to be on streets, and so we should have some people talking about streets and bridges and stuff like that. But we continue that for the next few weeks into March, and then we'll conclude with some sort of assessment of what your inputs are and go from there. The role of the Citizens Advisory Committee is basically to take information from you as citizens scattered throughout the city and give the capital committee some your input on what you believe should be some priorities on capital investment. Now, as we talk about this, you'll see readily that obviously the needs are much greater than the revenue we have available. But we do want to take into account those needs that you think that are important. And that information is then funneled up to the capital committee. And the capital committee deliberates itself, and then it too is an advisory body, but it advises both the Board of E&A and Board of Aldermen, who ultimately have the responsibility of appropriating the budget. And the budget is submitted, it's a parallel process with the operating budget. It will be submitted to the Board of E&A in April, and then the Board of Aldermen receives it, and they have 60 days prior to the start of our fiscal year, which is July 1st. So that's the timetable we're on. So I hope we can enjoy these next few weeks with you all and go into some details on what our capital needs are in our structure. So what one of the items I'd like to pull up now is basically before we go forward, I wanted to go back, and I have a history. Is that on screen right now? Good? Okay, great. And what I did was before we always talk about what we're looking forward to in an FY, which
Pardon me, Mr. Payne. Pardon me, Mr. Payne, could you enlarge it just a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah. Of course, I enlarged it and it gets too big. By the way, all of these documents that I'm going to be pulling up will be posted online and underneath the agenda. They're actually there now. So if you want to download it afterwards, we can do that. You can do that on your at your leisure. But where I was going to go is before we start talking about next year, which is FY27, I thought it would be good to have a history of our capital improvement allocations going back 5 years, because we usually look up ahead 5 years. I wanted to go back 5 years. And so what this does is go back to FY22 and forward through FY26 of our capital appropriations. And you'll see it varies by amounts. We've had FY20, we had a supplemental appropriation in FY22, and we also had a supplemental appropriation in FY23. And we had a bond issue in FY23 as well. There may be a bond issue this year as well, which we can discuss at a future date. And then you can see the FY24, 25, and 26. It includes all of the capital appropriations by department and category. I've also included under separate from this process, there were a lot of appropriations via ARPA funds. I've included those here as well, just so you know, just gives you context about the overall capital appropriations over the last 5 years. So it puts it in some context. You will see in our current capital needs inventory that some of these things, some of these items are ongoing. So let's say whether it's rec centers or let's say pool renovations or things like that, where the original need may have been $5 million. We've contributed to year to date, and so it continues. So there are things that we are doing on a year by year basis to try to address, because we can't do it all in 1 year. So you're going to see some recurring projects on the current inventory, but I just want to let you know. But this is a handy reference for you all, just in case you want to look back over the last 5 years and see how funds have been allocated. And then I see it in the chat, project completed, FY23. Yeah, FY22 and 23. Yeah, this is the appropriated amounts for those years. Okay, yeah, all these documents and all of these documents are, again, posted on the website, so you should be able to find them. Okay, one other document before we get into the actual inventory is the preliminary outlook for FY27. So let me enlarge this so you can see it. The current year, the capital budget has a number of sources of revenue allocated primarily by ordinance. The largest single source is a 1/2-cent sales tax for capital improvements. And the ordinance which established that, and it was voted on by the public, I believe back in 95, I believe, allocates those revenues on a certain, and you'll see that in the budget guide, by certain percentages. 50% go to ward accounts, 20% goes to citywide accounts, 17% goes to 5 of our major parks, 3% goes to recreation centers, and 10% goes to police department improvements. And so that's our single largest source of revenue to the capital fund. You also have a number of other sales taxes, particularly for metro parks. There's a 10th cent of a 3/16 cent. This is part of the regional parks, metro parks, which they did collectively regional parks, but part of those funds, 50% of the 110 cent and 40% of the 3/16 cent come back to the city for some park improvements. And then that's divided by the regional parks as well as the neighborhood parks. Now, one of the big items you'll see here by ordinance, the capital fund receives, is anytime we have a budget surplus, an operating surplus in the prior year, 1/2 of that surplus is allocated to the capital fund, which is a good policy in that it's a one-time source, so and we have a one-time use. But it also shows you that from year to year, depending on what your surpluses are, or if there are any surplus, it varies. So you'll see last year our surplus was quite small compared to the previous year, and the year before that was significantly larger. So you're going to see that this year's capital budget will be smaller, at least based on that, than last year's because of the surplus amount is smaller. And then we have some miscellaneous contributions for various funds. We have gasoline tax revenue that's allocated to streets and bridges, and then we have some contributions from the general fund and other sources. Now, the big items that we will be looking at, the existing debt we have to pay, so that's sort of programmed in. The road and bridge improvements, which Rich can talk about, that's from the gasoline tax, and we can talk about that. But our more discretionary items are going to be in the area with the prior year balance. The half-year balance was at 4.35 million. We had 9.35 million. I believe 5 million of that was allocated to the flood wall. That number I saw recently may be a little lower than that. So if we have to adjust, we'll have some additional monies we can throw into this number here. And then some various city building improvements and equipment. These other items on the budget, the ward improvements allocated by the alder people, and they get half of this half-cent sales tax. And then we get those parks and improvements and the recreation center improvements that are allocated by the capital fund, as well as police improvements. So you can see the preliminary numbers here. I've got it 61 million last year. It's down to 48.7 this year. So there's sort of a decline in available revenues. Now, it is possible that we're going to have an additional general obligation bond issue this year, probably north of $20 million, which will also provide us with some additional funds. Although under a GO bond issue, the uses have to be a useful life as long as the bonds are issued. So there are a little bit more restrictions on those kind of allocations, but we can discuss that a little bit as we go. But I did want to just give you an idea. This is sort of the constraints we have going forward into FY27. And so that's what we're looking at. I do see one question here. Okay, yeah. What is the overall trend of the capital budget? The underlying sources, for instance, the half-cent capital sales tax. Sales tax doesn't grow that much, but it does grow. And so we've got it this year up 1.6%. I've got next year preliminary at 1%. Just to be conservative, but you'll see a little bit of growth. It's not a strong grower. But as I mentioned, the big variable in the budget here is the surplus money. So if the surplus in the prior year is smaller, our budget's going to be smaller for capital. And that's just how that works. Okay. And I don't see any questions there. So so that's what we're looking at for next year. And what we need to look at from that point. So now you've got the restraints on how much we have in revenue. So what are the needs? And so every year for the needs, what we do is we reach out, both as Rich has President of the Board of Public Service has a knowledge of what our city's facilities and assets are and what needs there are. We also outreach to the city departments as they know what have some individual needs with their departments to make sure that they have the equipment and assets they need to provide city services. And that's all put together through the Board of Public Service, reviews that and puts that together in a document that we call the city-wide capital needs inventory. And that's updated each year. That's also posted online. I'm going to pull it up right now. Let's see here. Whoops. Let's see. Thought I had it on here. Here we are. Okay. Can everyone see this document now? Okay, very good. All right, so this is the capital improvement needs summary that is always that we put together each year. And as I mentioned, we're going to be having a number of meetings over the next few weeks to go over these various categories. You can see it's streets, bridges, parks, fire, police, corrections, other, and city vehicles. So we'll be going into those categories over the next few weeks to discuss them in detail. But today I'd like to be able to go, and Rich is going to be able to lead us through this overview of the total needs. The way it's broken out here is that we have a red, yellow, and green. Red being the critical, those items more seriously in need. There's a needed column, and you can see that it's not typically as critical, but is needed. And then we have those things that are identified as desirable. And the total needs of 461 million, of which 225.8 million are identified as critical. Now, when I went over this a week or so ago with the capital committee, I've noticed that over the years, since our funds are limited, sometimes things migrate over to the critical column simply because they know if it's needed, desirable, we don't have enough funds, and generally it's not going to be considered if it's not even in the critical column. So just keep an eye on that because just critical needs alone are just way more than we have available. So, but it's just something to keep in mind when you go through these. So what I'd like to do now is hand this over to Rich Bradley, who can walk you through some of these details of each category, and hopefully we can get through it. If there's any questions up there, again, I think what we'll do is we'll pause after each category and we'll address any questions that might come up along the way. All right. So, Rich, do you want to take it away from here?
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the intro information, Paul. It puts a lot of narrative around what we're trying to do here with particularly $225.8 million in critical needs. And we're talking about pairing up about $40 to $50 million worth of funding to take care of those. So a couple of comments that I want to make up front and just make sure everybody is on the same page with us is that we walk through the critical needs, the red critical needs only, simply because there's nowhere near enough funding to fund those. And so to get into the needed or desirable category would just be simply daunting and not productive for what this committee is going to help the capital committee and ultimately the capital needs inventory with. So a couple other things that I want to point out too that are pretty important to understand. There are requirements for us to do certain things by ordinance. And so I'll talk about those as we walk through those. There are requirements that we have to do as far as replacing equipment. So, for example, much of the equipment that is in the critical need of this list is well beyond its useful life. If a piece of HVAC equipment has a 20-year useful life, generally before it makes the critical needs portion of this list, it's well over 2 times its useful life. And what happens is we maintain, my staff for facility maintain these pieces of equipment as long as they possibly can until they can't buy parts anymore. There are some pieces of equipment, for example, that we actually make parts to. And we need to replace those obviously because that is for the operation of all the different facilities and buildings and so forth. You know, same thing goes for bridges. The useful life of a bridge is about 20 to 30 years. We have a bridge on the inventory tonight that we're going to talk about for replacement. It is 104 years old. So before we get down to these things, we literally get our money's worth out of them before we're going to replacement. So let me jump into this. So this is by category A through H. I'm going to start with streets. And what I'm going to say, category A, if you'll pull that one up, Paul. Thank you. So category A and category B, there's something very important to understand about both of those. And that is that we apply for Transportation Improvement Program grants through East West Gateway, our MPO. In fact, we just turned in 4 grants this year for items that are on this list. And just so you know how that works, we do a grant application. A grant application takes a couple of months to put together, very detailed. It competes with all the other regions in the St. Louis area. And then, you know, East West Gateway evaluates these applications. And then a committee in May will make recommendations to a transportation program subcommittee. And then there's a public meeting of East West Gateway Board in June. And then the advisory board will make the awards in July. So final awards are usually in August. So it's a year-long process almost once you turn in these applications. And we turn in applications for everything that we feel like we can, for every category that we can. And why we do that is because these grants pay 80 cents on a dollar, 80 cents federal funding, 20 cents local match share, which we come up with. And all of our large projects, generally streets and bridges and so forth that are applicable, we get grants for, and that saves us a lot of capital funding that we can use towards other things. So that's one thing I want you to keep in mind. The other thing that's extremely important is you're going to see on this list of streets, there are a number of items that are highlighted in blue. So per ordinance 71882, the complete streets ordinance, which is effective August 31st of 2024, a complete streets advisory committee was created and tasked with mobility related responsibilities. One of their tasks is to make recommendations to the city's capital committee on transportation mobility related projects and for inclusion and prioritization in our capital improvement plan. These recommendations shall ensure that planned improvements prioritize vulnerable users, pedestrians, children, elderly, low-income residents, those with vision, hearing, and mobility disabilities, and people of color. The second thing is the need for the improvements to fulfill mobility goals and implement the city's transportation and mobility plan. And number 3 is to address the rate of fatalities and injuries as shown in the city's high injury network. So these items that are listed in blue here are these items that were recommended this year by the Complete Streets Committee. So let me start on this and walk through these. The descriptions are going to be very brief, but I hope to give you a flavor for what these projects are, and then we can stop after each section and I can try to answer whatever questions you might have. So ADA transition plan implementation is a $3 million ask from the Complete Streets Committee. There are no specific projects that are highlighted in here simply because my staff will work with the office that David Newberger runs, Commissioner, and we will come through and do projects that have been recommended in the ADA accessibility plan, which we have put together within the past couple of years. We have funded about $6 million to date on ADA transition projects. We have a lot more to go. And so this is one that definitely is critical to us. David would probably say, you know, if we could get $20 million this time, it would probably be a good thing. And that still wouldn't even be close to where we need to be. And these are all this program is dictated by the ADA Accessibility American Disabled Program, and we are required by law to be fully accessible in all our facilities and all of our programs. And if we're not, we are subject to the United States Department of Justice coming in and basically telling us what we need to do and how we need to spend our money to get there. So we have a plan. We're working on it. We're working towards it. And that is a lot better than where we were a number of years ago. So big, important project there. The next one on the list is River to Pier Boulevard improvements. And that is a $19.7 million job. The local match share is about 2.8 million. We had funded the design for it. We also funded about $650,000 last year. The description of that project is $19.7 million project, largely construct River to Pier Boulevard between Lansdowne and Gravois, adding a variety of typical safety features to the currently substandard roadway. Safety features including adequate lane widths, drainage improvements, pavement reconstruction, intersection and ramp modification, signal and or roundabout installation, guardrail, center medians, and improved bus stops. And this is an important one. That is, there's a high crash network within the city, and we do have a grant for that project. And so what we're working on there is finding the rest of the local match share for that project. Step down to arterial street paving. That's a $10 million placeholder. I will say that we have done a substantial amount of paving that we're working on right now, and that we're working on with the ARPA funding, and that has taken place over the last couple of years. And so this, again, $10 million is for arterial streets. So we don't have to go to our alders and ask for funding. They can concentrate more on the secondaries and residential type streets. And so we've given a few million dollars each year towards this program, and that is above and beyond the ARPA projects. And that is not a grant project. It's a standalone local match share. The underground downtown lighting vaults, that is a project from the street department. That is the replacement of 11 underground lighting vaults within the city. These are the concrete lighting vaults that power the 50,000 street lights around the city. It's just actually the ones in downtown. So it's not all 50,000 of them, but it is exactly where the power and so forth, the capacitor banks and so forth come from to power the street lights. Previously, we've put about $1.2 million into this project. This is the remaining local balance. There is no grant for this project. The next one, signal timing and detection, is a $1 million project. Again, this is not a grant project. This is replacement of loops and puck detectors that are in the pavement that actuate the traffic signals when vehicles approach them. There are also cameras on some of these, but the loop detectors and the pucks that are in the pavement in the downtown area are old. They need to be replaced. And so this is a part of the project to do that. The next one is traffic management enhancements, phase 9, Skinker, Canterbury to Etzel. This is a complete streets recommendation, and I will go to their description of it for you. It's a $12.2 million project, about $2.040 million in local match share. We've received the CMAQ grant, which is congestion mitigation and air quality grant from East West Gateway. And so at this point in time, what we're looking for is to come up with the local match share. And that project, the description is this project will replace and modernize approximately 20 traffic signals and improve signalized intersections and ADA facilities through the corridor between Arsenal Street and Etzel, as well as evaluate lane changes, new sidewalk connections north of Rosedale Avenue. So that's a grant project again, and we're looking for a local match share. The next project is Christie Boulevard Cycle Track Pedestrian Improvements. This is also a grant project. We have received a TAP grant from East West Gateway. So we're looking for the $500,000 local match share. And the description of that project is And this is also, again, a complete streets committee project. The Christie Greenway currently runs from River to Pear Greenway to Holly Hills Boulevard. Extension will extend existing Christie Greenway north from where it currently ends, 0.9 miles, Kings Highway Boulevard. This stretch of roadway currently has on-street bike facilities, but the opportunity exists to upgrade bike lanes and incorporate sidewalk level multi-use trail generally on the west side of the street. There are limited intersections, curb cuts in this corridor, making it ideal for the Greenway. And this project grew out of a traffic study, which looked at opportunities to improve the existing bike connections. So again, that is a complete streets in a grant funded project. You'll go to the next page, Paul. Item number 10 is bike facility improvements. This is a complete streets committee recommended project. It is not a grant project. This is $1 million standalone project that will be funded by the city. And basically the description of what we're looking for here is this will include restriping existing bike lanes and or new replacement durable thermoplastic bike lane symbols and thermoplastic sharrows, updates to the city installed bike facilities which may only have conventional paint markings, an added stock of necessary features for certain bike facility elements like zebra delineators, flexible posts. The project may include spot upgrades where feasible, such as enhanced crosswalk markings or green pavement markings in needed areas. And it's in order to better maintain expanding network of bike facilities in the city. And again, this is a locally funded project for $1 million. The next project is flood wall repairs. This is a local project. There is no grant for this. What this is repairs to the city's flood wall system as required by the United States Army Corps of Engineers in order for us to be included in their flood insurance and flood protection program. And so the street department oversees the maintenance of the flood wall, but this is much more in detailed construction or repairs to the flood wall than would typically be handled under the street department. It could be the monitoring wells. It could be the gates that are throughout the flood wall system. It could be concrete repairs to the wall system itself, but there's a whole myriad of repairs that have been looked at and discussed with the Corps of Engineers, and that is a $5 million ask. And the next project on the list is the Lindo multimodal improvements, and that is a grant project. We have applied for a TAP grant. We just recently applied for it, a $3.1 million project with a $620,000 local match share. The transportation and mobility plan lists this section of the street as a potential lane reduction to street design framework. The pavement is also in poor quality, and the design will include a protected bike facility, safety improvements, bus stop upgrades, and the preliminary conceptual design has been completed through a Ward Capital funded traffic study. So again, we're looking for a local match share of about $620,000. And then finally on the list for streets is traffic management enhancements phase 10. And so that is $11.2 million project. Again, a complete streets requested project. 2.2 million is the local match share. Recently just applied for a CMAQ grant through East West Gateway. And so the description on that is traffic signal replacement and fiber optic signal interconnect on South Kings Highway between McCree and Schollmeyer. And again, looking for a local match share of about $2.24 million. So let me take a breath and see if there's any questions on those projects.
One in the chat. Okay, yeah, this question is, if I understand it correctly, the match isn't budgeted until a grant is given or not?
So the problem is that we are on this schedule. We are on a schedule of applying for grants. And as I mentioned, the grant schedule, we just applied for the grant. We won't know until August. And so if you weren't to match up the local match share now, assuming we received the grant, you would miss an entire grant cycle doing this. Now, the question always comes up is, well, what if we program a local match share and we don't get the grant? And that's a great question. And so at that point in time, we would come back to the capital committee and we would ask for an addendum or a change, if you will, to reprogram that funding for another project, usually within the same family, whether it be streets or bridges, and see if we can match up and pick up something else with that if we don't get that grant. But as I said, we have a long history of applying for grants. Theoretically, it would go just the other way if you received the grant first and then you could not come up with the match funding for it, then you would lose the grant and East West Gateway would be less apt to give us one in the future. So this is the preferred route to take.
Yes, I have a question, Mr. Bradley.
Yeah, go
Hello?
ahead. Yeah,
Oh, yes.
go ahead.
Who is it? Two questions. The first question is, who is it that does an assessment in regards to what is considered to be critical? Is it somebody that comes from public service, or is it somebody, or is it done in-house by the department head? Secondly, the tornado damage many of the easements and sidewalks in North St. Louis with large stumps and sidewalks just completely destroyed, but I see that didn't meet the critical need. Is there a reason why that didn't constitute something critical for the community?
Yes, there's two things that go with that. So first of all, the critical needs are a culmination of two things. It's the operating departments, along with ordinance requirements, which I mentioned, along with an engineering review by my staff. And that's how we determine what those needs are. And again, going back on streets, where we get a grant that's 80% funded and we receive 80 cents on the dollar, that helps us to meet a number of other requirements as well. As far as the tornado sidewalks go, I'm going to tell you that we're working on that now with St. Louis Development Corporation. There will be a survey done in that area, and there will be funding that will be provided from it from I'm assuming another revenue source that they have earmarked for the tornado damage, which is not in this particular capital needs list. And so I know my department will be very involved with replacing those sidewalks along with street department. I think, the big idea there is the trees and debris get down and get out of there. The work on the buildings, the private property happens, and then we start putting the sidewalks back when, that work is relatively completed. So new sidewalks aren't damaged, but I can assure you that is underway.
But based upon your assessment as it stands, that didn't meet the critical need budget for those particular projects, right?
So right. So what I'm saying is the sidewalks from the tornado are from a whole different funding source. So, and a different program. So that's why they're not here. It's being handled through a different program.
Yeah, those funding needs to date from the tornado are very much larger than anything we've got here in the capital fund. That's going to be a much larger projects to deal with than just this capital fund.
And I would say also, while, just to add on to that the funding, whether it be city funding, state funding, FEMA funding, or whatever, all those things are being taken into consideration, as far as restoration of the tornado damaged area. And this is just our basic citywide capital where we allocate funding on a normal basis. So again, like Paul said, that is a much larger pot of money, pots of money, and scope of work than what we have here.
Okay, I got a couple more questions here. Are projects descriptions provided? Do we have project descriptions that we could also download, or is that?
So we may.
Complete streets, right?
So we may. I think all the complete streets ones are already there. because it's in the letter from Scott Ogilvy and the Complete Streets Committee. So for streets and bridges, they're already there and they should be already distributed or in your information.
Okay, and then another one about staffing. I'm not sure which staffing sheet we're referencing here, but talking about our BPS had 128 employees, about 20 fewer than last year. You're below the budgeted amount. Is that having any impact on your project delivery or and such?
So I think that's a big question to ask. It certainly does. I think there's a lot of things that have impact on project delivery. A lot of it is that we are down a number of people. There's this whole conversation about, compensation studies, which we're not going to get into in this committee. It's outside that purview. And then there's the funding that came from ARPA and other things all at one time. So it has been very challenging to continue to get projects completed. But I will tell you, $131 million in ARPA projects we have to have completed by the end of this coming year, and we're on track to get that done, as well as spending our federal funding and GOB funding from 2023. So yes, we are down. I think that's a legitimate concern, and we are doing the best we can to hire more people and retain more people. But I will tell you, a lot of young people aren't going to school today to be engineers. It's not as high paying as they would like it to be, and it's a difficult go. So hard to find people. So I'll stop there. Okay.
Yeah, I just typed in the website, and I was going to show you at the end of the meeting where everything's going to be posted, so you have access to all these documents.
Okay. You want to go on to B, Paul?
Sure.
Thank you. So B is bridges. And so there are just a few items on the bridge list, which we'll talk about here. Let's talk about the straightforward one at the bottom first, number 6, which is Old Stable Bridge. That is a bridge in Forest Park. And, I think I mentioned it at the onset of the meeting. It's a 600 feet west of the Pagoda Circle, crosses over one of the waterways in the park. The bridge is currently 104 years old and is in need of replacement. It's an off-system bridge, which means it's just a different funding source than the major arterial street bridges around the city. And so we're going to rebuild that bridge. And so the ask there is we will apply for a BRO funding. We have $120,000 already funded for the design. We'll be looking for $640,000, I believe is the number on the list. $660,000 for the local match share of that $3.9 million project. Again, that is a complete street recommended project. If you go to the straight up, we'll talk about the Compton Bridge over Mill Creek Rail Yard. The design for this project is actually completed. It's a $27 million project. It completely replaces the Compton Avenue Bridge at Shodo across all the rail yards and towards Chaffetz Arena. The maximum federal match share for this project is $6.3 million. And we already have $2 million in local match share. We already have $4 million in local match share. We're looking for about another $3 million in local match share. This project started in about 2019. That's how long it takes to do these type of projects, particularly in an area where you have the railroads and getting all the right of way and access. And so the cost has escalated over that period of time. Where the project stands right now, I spoke with the mayor earlier today about it. The governor is signing off on a couple of right-of-way documents. As soon as the governor signs off on those right-of-way documents and title, we will bid that project and get that project moving along. So that has been a long time in the waiting, but it has been a daunting task to get a lot of these pieces and agreements taken care of, particularly with the railroad and the state of Missouri and others. So that is that project. And then the Southwest Columbia Bridge over off Kings Highway in Southwest. That is a a $9.1 million project. That is a grant project. And I will tell you that the railroad, the Union Pacific Railroad, paid generally all of the local match share for that project for us. But again, it's been in process for about 4 years. And so costs have escalated, and we're looking at about another $1 million. And to the question about staff, that is one where we talk about we may need a consultant, a construction manager to help us with the management of that project because we are short staffed on that one. And where that project stands right now is it's ready to go to bid as well. There was one temporary construction easement that needed to be required for a driveway, and the building owner just would not work through the process with us. We had to file for condemnation. We got through the condemnation. The judge found in our favor. Now we're just waiting for the judge to tell us, the courts to tell us what we have to pay the owner to remove and move a driveway on his property. So again, another project ready to go, another big project, big bridge project. And that bridge was somewhere around 90 years old, those two bridges, when we started this project. So I'm going to stop on bridges. Any questions on bridges?
Yes,
So,
have there been an assessment on the bridge that's in Dayton, located at Broadway and Schweitzer?
An assessment on which bridge, Mr. Aaron's? I didn't catch that, sir.
That's located in the Dayton area on North
Yes.
Broadway and Schweitzer?
Yes, so we own 74 bridges in the city of St. Louis. We are required to perform bridge inspections on them, either on a biannual or annual basis, depending on their survey condition. And so, yes, it is done. That bridge, I believe, is every 2 years. It is inspected. I don't have the list directly in front of me, but it is not critical need to replace that one.
if you do need a project manager for that last bridge, I guess that's not incorporated into the cost at this point.
If we do need one, well, we're gonna wait and we're gonna see how staffing looks at that point in time and when it hits. And then that would be incorporated into this additional $1 million we're looking at here as a critical need.
Okay.
Yes.
I also have another question on the bridge projects. Will it get more expensive as time goes by if they're not completed now?
So yes, it will. Just like everything else, the cost inflates over time. But generally, once we get a construction contract and we're locked in, that helps mitigate those type of things. Of course, you can always have an unforeseen condition, and the cost of that might be depending on whatever whatever you find and whatever time frame has occurred since then. But yes, it is in our advantage to get them out to bid with the numbers that we have as soon as possible, and that's what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Okay. All right. You want to go on to C? This is Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, and there are a number of notes on these which tell you what they are. And so I don't know that you really want me to read through all the notes on you in the interest of time. What I can tell you is that Soulard Market, we'll walk through, and Soulard Market is a $3 million ask. Currently, to date, we've provided about $5.7 million in funding, and a number of needs have happened down there, from roofing to tuck pointing to electrical to plumbing to doors and other things that are on that building. This is the remaining ask for that building, and then again, it's for roofing and gutters and all those things that are in the note area of this ask. And so that building, it has received a substantial amount of work over the past 3-4 years, which it had not previous to that. And of course, everyone knows it's a landmark in St. Louis, and we need to keep that building maintained. So that was Parks' number one ask as far as what would Soulard Market. Pool renovation project. And so I just want to remind everybody about this. I should have said this in the beginning. Just keep everybody in mind here. There are 7 rec centers in the city of St. Louis. Marquette, Cherokee, Tandy, Wool, Gamble, Coffin Park, and Booter. And then, of course, there are the two rec plexes, which are Carondelet and O'Fallon Park. And there are 7 pools, not including the 2 rec plexes. There are 3 outdoor pools at Marquette, Chambers, and Fairgrounds. And there are 4 indoor pools at Tandy, Wool, Cherokee, and Coffin Park. So the pool renovation project here, there's a remaining ask of about $2.5 million. We've already put about 3.5 million into pool renovations. Parks is saying this should be the final ask. And really what the pool renovations does is it's mechanical, piping, concrete work, tile work, lighting, return lines, pumps, all kind of things that keep those pools operative. And again, they've been working on a number of the pools with the 3.5 million that we've put in previously. The next item is Barrett Brothers Park Comfort Station. This is in Barrett Brothers Park, and this building is actually condemned and needs to be torn down and replaced. And so, you know, we're estimating that it's about a $1.7 million ask to remove that building, abate it of any hazardous materials, and design and construct a new comfort station within that park for the residents to use. The next item on the list, the O'Fallon Park YMCA parking lot repairs, $750,000. If you're familiar with the O'Fallon Park Rec Center, the asphalt parking lot falls into rain gardens. It's a sustainable feature. The parking lot has a lot of holes in it. It's very beat up. It's crumbling at the edges. And so we're estimating $750,000 to prep and repave that parking lot. The next item is repair and replace glass block exterior walls at the Wool Rec Center, $3 million. The Wool Rec Center on North Kings Highway. The metal dividers between the glass block windows are rusting and the wall is actually bowing. And so we assume, or we are suspecting, it's a structural issue, a foundation issue. And we really don't have a good feel for what the cost is going to be. But from talking to our staff and other engineering folks, we're putting a $3 million price tag on that to remove and replace and fix that wall that is structurally having issues at the Wool Rec Center. And that one is particularly important, as are any rec centers work, simply because we have a lot of elderly residents, we have a lot of children that are there, and certainly anybody that would be there. It's a gathering place. We wouldn't want something catastrophic to happen there. So we would like to approach that. The Jewel Blocks glass replacement at $5 million. There's a number of issues with the framework and the glass that is up there. You can read the notes on this. I will also tell you that as part of the tornado damage, a lot of the glass was broken up there, but with the requirements of any insurance that we would have had, our FEMA requirements, we were allowed to replace glass, not structural systems that hold glass. So the glass has been put back, but again, another issue where you're talking a very aged building needing some structural type repairs where holds the glass in. Drop down to the Carondelet Lao House in Carondelet Park. That's a $3 million ask there. That is a very historic building in Carondelet Park. It was fire damaged. The Carondelet Park Advisory Board, as well as Alderwoman Schweitzer, have been working diligently to find grant funding to match up and help repair that historical building. This $3 million ask would repair the fire damage to that building. Currently, it is fenced off and it is not usable in the condition it's in. So the answer is either we would fund the renovations for it, the organizations would come up with some type of grant to repair it, or the building would need to be demoed. And I believe at the moment, the drive from everyone is to try to save that building. The next one is Clifton Heights Park Comfort Station roof and deck replacement. This is very similar to Barrett Brothers Park. Comfort Station in Clifton Heights Park. The building is condemned, needs to be torn down. And so the idea here is you know, $750,000. It's a smaller comfort station than what is in Barrett Brothers Park. And the idea would be to get the building torn down, hopefully by the building division, where that wouldn't be part of the cost. The 750 would be putting the building back in place. You flip to the next page, Paul. Item number 13 is new fitness equipment for all rec centers. And basically this $200,000 is an ask for all of the 7 city rec centers that I talked about, not the mega Rexplex, Fallon Park or Crown Left Park. And this is simply replacing dated fitness equipment in these rec centers for the programs for our neighbors and young people to utilize. I have never seen any of that equipment replaced except piecemeal. This would be a carte blanche replacement of that. And then there's also an item on here, under counter ice machines for all rec centers, $30,000. I would ask you to just take that off your mind, because I will find some funding here to help parks replace those. It is under $50,000, so it really doesn't apply as a capital need, although it is something that's important again at our rec center. So I will be committed to find that $30,000 and get those items taken off. If you'd move to the next page, this will be the final page for Parks, Rec, and Forestry. And so hazardous tree removal under forestry, $1,100. Previous to this, $2.2 million was put towards this item. This goes back to the question that was asked right up front in the beginning about staffing shortages. This is to help the forestry division with staffing shortages to take down hazardous trees around the city and in the public right of way. And then ash tree removal is hand in hand with that, $550,000. That is the exact same situation with staffing shortages. However, this particular item is for removing ash trees due to the emerald ash borer, which is the bug that goes around and eats the trees, and then they fall and they become dangerous and hazardous. So that program is well underway. We've put about $2.6 million into that program previously. And then final item on parks is 1415 North 13th Street garage heaters. This is the Mangelsdorf building, which the forestry has their headquarters in. This is replacement of garage heaters where folks work in the garage all day long. These are RTU type heaters that well beyond their useful life. A couple of them already are not working and the other 2 are about to fail. So we need to replace those. And that is about a $400,000 ask to get that done properly. So I'm going to stop there. And on parks, I believe we have some questions, right?
Yep. Let's see. Is the $5 million for Jewel Box total project cost, or what the city is being asked to fund along with Forest Park Forever?
So that's the city's ask. I'm not aware of what Forest Park Forever would be asking. That, you know, the Parks Department is going to make a presentation to this committee. So that would be a good question for the Parks Director and the Park Commissioner. You know, is that part of their ask? But that's a good question. I don't have an answer for it, but be a great question to ask them. Their capital needs list requested $5 million from this body.
Okay, the next question, how is the Lyle House used? I've never seen anyone use that site. I'm wondering how it's critical.
So I'm just going to say that I live in the neighborhood by the Lyle House. I don't know how it is used. I can't speak to that. That would be something that the Crown Park Advisory Board or Alderwoman Schweitzer would need to answer. The reason it becomes critical is twofold. Number one, it's a historical structure. It is the oldest frame structure of its type in the city of St. Louis. And number two, it is right now, it is fire damaged and it is teetering on the brink of not being a safe facility in a public park where you have a number of people. So the conversation has to be, we either renovate it or we demo it. And so you know, right now, the neighborhood, the park, the Cronella Park Advisory Board, the alderperson would like to save it. They're working on grants. You know, the question becomes is if the capital committee doesn't fund it and they don't get a grant, then, you know, I guess the question will go to the Parks Department and those folks about what's the next step. I don't want to go down that road too terribly far because it is certainly not my decision, but I would tell you it's one way or the other. Either it needs to be renovated totally, which is a $3 million price tag, or it needs to be demoed. Otherwise, it's a public safety issue.
The next one, do we get ROIs on these projects to help us determine prioritization?
So here's the thing about ROI that I've said for many, many years. So return on investment is if you have a project that still works and you just want to get a better efficiency or so forth on it, you're going to do an ROI to make sure that it's a replacement, not a repair. Most of these things are so far beyond their useful life. As I said in the very, very beginning, it is either operational or it's not. And so we don't go through very detailed conversations of ROI simply because most of these things are at their failure mode, have failed, will fail, or about to fail. And so that's how they make the critical needs list. Now, if we were going to do a desirable item or possibly even a needed item, I could understand that conversation much more in detail than these items that are here.
And we have in the past on some of these. For instance, I know with the street light conversion to LEDs as well as traffic light, there was a program with the state, and we identified utility savings, and we utilized those savings to finance the purchase of the replacements and such. So it does have a role there in particular projects.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. You want to go on to D, fire department?
I have one question in regards to parks. The stumps that's in O'Fallon Park and Fairground Park, many stumps, and as we know, they actually are trip hazards and have the ability to be able to draw a lot of pests. Is there a reason why those stumps did not reach the critical need to be removed from those parks?
So I don't have the answer to that question, but when the Parks, Recreation and Forestry make their presentation, Mr. Arnzel, I would certainly ask that question. I don't know the answer to it. I know they were doing stump removals because there was actually a company that was doing them. My assumption is they're just behind on them because there were so many trees that were damaged. But I would ask you to please hold that question for that department. Okay.
Okay.
You want to go to D? Okay. So D is the St. Louis Fire Department. And as we look through this, there are approximately 30 fire stations in the city of St. Louis. Most of them are 1800s vintage stations. And the last time that any of them had any work done to them was in the late 80s, early 90s. So the first item on the list is HVAC plumbing upgrades and all fire stations, $2.2 million. This could be mechanical, electrical, plumbing upgrades. Keep in mind that fire individuals live in these houses 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So it's just like living in your house at home, and 3 different shifts or whatever shifts they run. All these things are pretty well worn out and dated. We've done a lot of work to many of these systems. We've had plumbing leaks and electrical issues, but mostly HVAC problems. And so this would take a whole look at those 30 buildings and see what their needs are, prioritize them, and then work down a list of about $2.2 million. Again, it's more or less a placeholder, but we feel like it's a pretty good number. We've looked at it a couple times. We could even break this into pieces and start doing some funding on some of these rather than just all of them. All right. The next item on the list is, and this is an interesting one because people will say, well, why in the world would you replace carpet in a fire station? And so Many of the fire stations have terrazzo floors on the second floor, very maintainable. Many of them have heavy duty vinyl tiles on the second floor. The remaining 16 that are on this list are rolled stock carpet. And so that, again, that was put in about the 80s. We've put carpeting in some of them with in-house staff. And generally what the issue is this, is the carpeting does not come clean anymore. It's dirty, some of it's moldy, but what it really presents is a trip hazard. And so if you think about this, a two-story fire station at nighttime, and you have a call and someone wakes up and they're making their way to a fire pole or a staircase and they trip over an edge on the carpet, the idea here is to take all that carpeting out, which probably should have never been put in there in the first place, put down vinyl tile, and then make it very maintainable by the firefighters so they can mop and clean and keep it within reason of what they need to do. So, and then the next item on the list is the training tower retrofit. The training tower for $500,000 is at the corner of Jefferson and Cass. This is the fire department's major training facility. The tower opened in 1990. It needs to be renovated in order to be able to burn fires in it. So new fire proofing and blocking. It needs new burn and rack cages for live fires. The heat sensors are all need to be replaced. They're not currently burning fires there. Expanding the steel treads that are breaking and need a replacement. Steel smoke windows and doors need to be replaced. Bathrooms need to be updated. Fire sprinkler systems need to be upgraded. Safety railings are rusted and broken in many places and need to be replaced and painted. So it is the fire department's #1 training facility, and it needs some work done to it. We haven't done any major projects there as far back as I can remember. So this will be $500,000 towards that project. The next is fencing for firehouse parking lots. Engine houses number 19, 23, 28, and 31. And why this is critical is these are the only fire stations out of the 30 that are not fenced in and secure. And so, what happens is the firefighters go out for a run, and then, these multiple times their cars have been broken into, the back of the fire station has been broken into. So this secures those facilities from those type of things. So that should be the ask for the fire department buildings. If you roll to vehicles real quick. So this will give you a flavor for what kind of capital vehicle needs that we currently have. So critical, there are $46,983,000 worth of fire vehicle needs. And what you have to keep in mind is that a fire truck today is about $2 million. And so we don't get rid of fire trucks or ambulances until they literally don't run anymore. So we pay $2 million for them. When we scrap them, sometimes we get nothing. Sometimes we get a couple of $5,000 for them. So we keep everything that we have and we run it until the wheels fall off of it. Useful life of a fire truck is about 10 years. And so it's just a matter of replacing the equipment as it comes up. Same thing goes with ambulances. Ambulance replacement, if I'm not mistaken, is about $400,000, $350,000. And so we have to keep 12 of those on the street every day. We keep as many ambulances as we can so that, we've rebuilt the engines and so forth. And so we have spares. But you look down this list, and this is all the fire department vehicles that are there in order. And so depending on what we would allocate, we want to give to fire for vehicles, we would draw a line across the list, just like police, just like refuge, just like non-emergency fleet. And we would stop there and buy as many vehicles above the line as we can. Just to let you know, you can look at Paul's list that he gave in the beginning, and we have bought a lot of fire trucks and ambulances in the past, but these things run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so, they go through them. Some of them have accidents and other things happen. People run into them. So this is what their critical needs are in fire right now if we were going to replace all of their needs. So I'm going to stop after that with fire. Again, is there any questions on fire buildings or fire vehicles?
But I think that the overhead doors, I don't know why they didn't list it as critical. I wouldn't want to see a fire department not being able to pull their truck out the door because of that. And I think we need to look at moving that line item to something critical.
So we do pretty good with the overhead doors, but that is a very, very good point. We have an emergency overhead door contractor on staff, and that contract is part of my facilities budget. And so generally the doors are all up to snuff as far as age wise goes. Where they're not up to snuff is when they fail and they need to be repaired. And so they do have a mechanism. They can take them off the track. They can slide the door up, get the truck out, and then they call us and we have our emergency contract come fix it. But that is part of my facilities maintenance budget, which I'll be talking with Paul about here in the next few weeks. So good point.
There were a couple items I missed. This probably goes back to parks. I know Bill mentioned the stump removal. We talked about that. The question on funding for the renovation of the Compton Hill Reservoir.
So I will say this about Compton Hill Reservoir. So the Compton Hill Reservoir is owned by the Water Division. The Water Division is an enterprise account, just like the airport is. If you will notice, there are no funding items for capital for either the airport or the Water Division on this list. This is everything except the enterprise account. So I can't speak to that one because it's not under my purview. Paul, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, when this capital budget process was established by ordinance, specifically excluded water and airport because of that fact that they were. So if you look at the ordinance, it does specifically say water and airport are not included. So, and that's why, and they have their own different funding sources. Okay, we're running quick on time, short on time here, but let's get to.
Okay. Yeah, let's jump on down. I'll try to be a little briefer, guys. I'm sorry. So police department, and there are a number of items on here, and I can consolidate some of them. So first of all, ESD Fleet Services repairs the lighting conversion, HVAC lighting conversion. This is an ROI item. This is basically replacing LED lights and high efficiency units that are in that garage, which still has all the original fixtures and so forth. And the garage was built in the 90s. So we've been doing this in all the city buildings, replacing the LED lights and putting high efficiency units in as we replace HVAC. $550,000 ask there. Drop down, this comparison microscope is a police item. And so this comparison microscope is necessary to analyze bullet and casing for one case to another. It's used by the firearms section of the St. Louis Police Department. That is a $50,000 ask for one microscope. The gas chromatograph spectrometer, that is for the drug section to analyze various controlled substances, identify chemical substances, and determine if an individual violated the Missouri Controlled Substance Law. And that is for that one item, that is $120,000. And then we go through a series of these, and I'm just going to highlight these real quickly. HVAC repairs, AHUs, air handling units, controls. You can see if you look in the comment column, 50+ year old, poor condition. You go to the next page, you drop down. I'm going to say the logging recorder. I'll tell you that one real quick, $500,000. That's in the communications building. That is a piece of equipment that is used for tracking the phone calls for the 911 system. They have had issues with it for a number of years, but it is actually still operational, still needs to be replaced. You go to the next page, you'll see at the bottom, again, we're 53. We have water-cooled HVAC units, split system HVAC, split system. You look in the right column, you're going to see these things are 30, 40-year-old units. The same exact thing goes 56 through 62. These are all HVAC units that are in fair to poor type condition. There's a water plumbing item, number 57, where we've had a lot of water pressure issues, which we've had water leaks and so forth. So that's a $125,000 item. But these are general building maintenance items, and you can see the location, whether it's in the academy, whether it's in the communications building and so forth. The communications building, there's a partial radio system replacement. This is an important one for $8.7 million. Basically, what that is the manufacturer announced the city's current 18-year-old radio communication system will reach the end of its support in 2029. The request begins a multi-year purchase to systematically replace those items that will reach the end of their useful life in 2029. And the radio communication system needs to remain viable through the next decade. I'm sure you can all understand that, for mission critical communications of police, fire, and EMS, which are all on, and city agencies, all on the 800 megahertz system. And then let's see, there's a real-time crime center host refresh. That is an IT item. Let's see what I got on that one. So that particular item is this is a host refresh that serves the real-time crime center. So for all their software switches and so forth, this is an upgrade to the real-time crime center that was built about 10 years ago. And that one is $108,000. And the communications building has a UPS, which is uninterrupted power supply. And generally that is a battery backup for that building in case they lose power. And let's see what we got on the next page. We have vehicles on the next page. So the police vehicles, $3.5 million critical, $5.4 million needed, $9.6 million desirable. And the reason those numbers are relatively low is we had recently bought about 103 Tahoes, police vehicles for the police department. So we have been very diligent through funding sources. Again, you can look on Paul's list and you can see what we have previously replaced there. So let me stop with police. And so before someone asks the question, because you may, and it would be a good question, I'll just kind of head it off at the pass. Yes, they are back to state control and they have an allocated budget. And at the moment, we are still maintaining everything that we previously did with vehicles and buildings. And we're just keeping very close track of it. And that will all be worked out by the budget division and the police department as far as what their requirement is and what we have spent on them. And Paul, you might want to comment on that.
Yeah, no, that's still a work in progress. So because and a lot of those operational considerations we worked out with along with the budget process as it unfolds in the next couple of months.
Okay. So is there anything on police? I don't see anything there. Let's move on.
Are you suggesting, Paul, that there's a possibility that the city might be reimbursed on some of these critical needs?
Well, on what Rich was referring to is we are the city is currently providing services, and there's going back and forth between services that we provide the police department, and in this year's budget we actually budgeted that as an internal service, in which they pay back what we services we provide. And so, and to that extent, now that's on the operating side. That's not on the capital side. Capital side is a little different issue, but that's what he's referring to.
All right, you want to go to F? So F is corrections and other public safety. There's nothing on 1 to 14 that's critical. So we spent about $22 million on the Criminal Justice Center, and there have been actually a number of other upgrades as well that have been spent on the building itself between now and the past couple of years. And so there's currently nothing there that falls within the critical category. If you go to the next page, Paul. Oh, thank you. You're
yeah.
there. You're there. All right, public safety answering point, the PSAP is at the top of the list. That is a $12 million ask. So currently we have about $43 million program for that project. It is in construction. It is about 35% complete. The vast majority of the funding for that project is ARPA and ECO-DEVO funding, economic development sales tax. What's left is about $12 million. Of that, about $9 million is radio, is in technology and dispatching systems inside the building, and $3 million is the remaining construction costs. And so that building will be a state-of-the-art best management practices 911 center for police, fire, and EMS when it is complete. And if I didn't say it, it is located behind the fire department headquarters at Jefferson Cass. You want to move on to the next page? Oh, let's stop on corrections, public safety. Anything on that? Let's move on to other municipal buildings. And so there are a number of different buildings here, and we're going to go through and talk about them briefly. I'll just give you a little highlight here. Keep in mind, City Hall is 128 years old. The Civil Courts building is 96 years old. The Carnahan Courts building is 90 years old, and 1520 Market Street is 66 years old. So all these buildings are relatively older facilities, right? So the first 1520 Market is upgrade electrical switchgear, $1.8 million. That is original switchgear to that building, and it's reached its useful life, and we are having issues with it. It's giving us signs of failure. So it's something that if it goes out, the power to the entire building goes out. So that is a critical need. Streets and traffic, Hampton Avenue, $350,000 for a generator. That building has never had a generator before. It is the command center for all snow call type activities and things of that nature. And so the ask is $350,000 to put an emergency generator with that building so it operates in and during a power outage. The next one down is communications division. This is again is an air conditioning unit. That building has to be at least 50 years old, and this air conditioning system that is in there, condensing units, so forth, all original to the building. We have worked on it. It is in dire need of replacement. This again is the Mangelsdorf building, replace makeup air systems in the office area, just like the garage heaters down there. When we acquired that building 15, 20 years ago, the equipment that was in it is what was there. It is due for replacement, and that is the forestry headquarters. The medical examiner's office, which is just across the street from City Hall on Clark Street, is requesting $75,000 in security upgrades and cameras, door locks, and so forth. That building is manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so they would like some increased security around their building for their folks that are there. And then City Hall, this building has a multiple different types of roofs on it. We're asking for about $3 million to do vast roof repairs. We chase roof leaks around this building like you can't imagine, and that would help us to establish some programs to fix larger areas as opposed to simply patching when a water leak happens. Go to the next page. This is one that's been on the list for quite a while. This is the Civil Courts building. This is in the basement. The toilet room ventilation, $900,000. The reason it is critical, it is a code requirement that it is vented to the outside. And so there is no simple way to do that. I understand that for one restroom, that is a lot of money. And we've looked at every opportunity in the world to get that resolved. But other than short of closing the restroom to make it code compliant, this is what would need to be done to get proper ventilation in those toilet rooms in the basement. The next is Civil Courts building new water supply. $900,000. The water supply to the civil courts building is original. Again, I mentioned to you that the civil courts building is 96 years old. We had a failure at the Carnahan Courthouse and juvenile courts within the last 7-8 years, and they created a lot of damage and a lot of issues for those buildings. We are trying to be proactive and replace this water service before it fails. And at 96 years old, we've had leaks in it. We know it's going to fail. We like to replace before it does. 10 and 11, the civil courts building. What I will tell you is that building is grand and glorious. It has beautiful face panels on the outside that are made out of stone. Those face panels are all held on the building with steel straps, and they're structurally connected to the frame of the building. Many of those steel straps have rusted. Those face panels have moved. We're currently in phase 1 of working on that now for about $1 million. These are phases that will continue on down the road. 6.2 million, 3.5 million to make certain that the structure that holds all those face panels on that building are watertight and they're secure. We certainly wouldn't want one of those to fall off of that building. Civil courts fan coil units. There are 355 fan coil units throughout the civil courts building. These are HVAC items that cool and heat. The courtrooms generally heat, and so many of them leak and they drip water in the courtrooms, and that becomes a problem for safety on the floor, a mess, not working properly, and failure. So the $875,000 for a program to work on replacing those fan coil units. Let's see, Carnahan Courthouse, as I mentioned there, 90 years old. This is a replacement of supply and waste piping. So it's water supply, potable water, and waste drain lines that are in the walls of that facility. Again, they're all original to the building. And so we would like to establish a program to start replacing those toilet stacks, drain stacks, and potable water supply before we have a failure. Carnahan Courthouse replaced revolving doors, $130,000. So those are all original to the building as well. If you don't know this, revolving doors play such a big role in these big old majestic buildings because they keep the buildings pressurized. They keep the HVAC in, the cold out, the warm out, and the other inside. And these doors generally are failing and we can't get parts for them anymore. So $130,000 for revolving doors. Circuit court room modernization, 6.168 million. We have put about $1 million into this program so far. This is for the renovations to 31 courtrooms and upgrades to audio, visual, and digital technology for the use in the courtrooms for cases for the attorneys, the judges, and so forth in their everyday world. The next one is miscellaneous courthouse repairs for $150,000. This is for the courthouse staff. This is a discretionary fund for repairs for things that fail throughout the course of the year. They're asking for a discretionary fund. If you'll flip to the next page. We have the family court and juvenile detention center, fence, gate, key card striping, outdoor yard and lot security, upgrades. And this is a project that has been on the list for a while. And I want to see if I can tell you what this explanation for this one is. So basically, this is for the juveniles to be able to go out into the yard. It's for the parking lot security of the facility. It is all the items that are needed to make that happen. Gate fencing and key card systems. The family detention, juvenile detention center, doors and locks residential unit. This is taking a non-secure residential unit and making it into a secure unit by putting all the security, new doors and locks on that residential unit for expanded capacity for juveniles. And then We drop down to ITSA, and this is first is switch network recapitalization, prior year request. Let's see, city network upgrades required to accommodate new server technologies and remove restrictions on the service. Project will leverage city fiber to reduce reliance on the switched Ethernet services provided by vendors. And then the next item is Hyper-V server replacement. And that is, let's see, give me a second here. Try to get the right one for this one. That is all city network storage website and IT services rely on server nodes, response time, enhanced user experience, improve uptime, and Dell warranted maintenance on devices. For production stack goes offline, the city IT services will go down, rendering the city IT useless until parts are found and maintenance techs are located. The city maintains a 7-node Hyper-V stack. The oldest of these devices are nearing their useful life and support and require third-party warranted service for parts and repairs. And that one is a $900,000 ask. Actually, it's a $225,000 ask for 4 years. And then core switch replacement is recapitalization project, part of the wide area network fiber repair replacements. It's utilized by the city land connectivity for traffic, real-time crime center, police cameras, street lighting, traffic timing, data center operations, and community Wi-Fi projects in parks and business districts. And so that one is a $400,000 ask, $100,000 a year for 4 years. And then flip to the last page on G. So the circuit attorney's office is security upgrades. This is doors, locks, panic bars, cameras, so forth for the circuit attorney's office in the Carnahan Courthouse building, $75,000 ask. 1520 Market Street facade repairs. This is an ask by the comptroller for City Hall West, 1520 Market, 66-year-old building to work on the exterior doors in the facade of the building. Most of those doors over there do not work. I was there for a public hearing last night. The doors are constantly propped open. They don't lock correctly. This would replace exterior doors to that building. The next is Gateway Transportation Center, repairs to train platforms A and B. And there's a description on that one. Okay, this is a safety-related project to repair Amtrak passenger walkways and platforms. The project will also repair federally mandated safety tiles along the edges of these platforms A and B. And so that is a safety project for $155,200. Municipal garage repairs. This is actually waterproofing and tuck pointing of the city's municipal garage at Tucker and Clark Street. And there are a lot of waterproofing repairs that need to be done. There's a half sole repair that needs to be done to the roof of that garage to prevent water infiltration. Many city employees who work in the buildings downtown park in that garage. And so that building is definitely needed to be repaired for water infiltration, spalling of concrete and so forth. The tow lot, this is a relocation of the existing tow lot from its current facility on Hall Street and moving it down to the MSI site where the maximum medium security institution previously was demolished. And it would be fencing, lighting, parking area, and office facilities to operate the tow lot. The South Refuse Garage, this is miscellaneous repairs to the actual garage located at 4100 South First Street. We're 40 people in this building a day, the dumpster operation and so forth. This is replacing heating in the building. Currently, the heaters do not work. The roof leaks, and it would be upgrades to clean that building up and to make it usable in the offices, the locker rooms, the break rooms for all of our refuse employees that report to South Refuge. And then refuse, this is actually in the incinerator building itself, replace 2 makeup air units and exhaust fans that are well beyond their useful life. One of them has already failed. The other one is about to fail for $100,000. So that is all of our municipal building repairs. Stop there and take a breath.
They're running just a little long, so we got what, one category left?
Yeah, the last
Just
can be
briefly.
pretty quick. So we have 2 items that are left. We have H1, which is city vehicles, which is all city vehicles other than police and fire and refuse. And so again, the critical needs there are about $42.5 million needed, 5.6 desirable, 14 million. And so again, these are in order of need, prioritized by our equipment services division in conjunction with all the operating department directors and commissioners and what needs to be done every day to run their operation. The capital committee will allocate a dollar amount to this, and a line will get drawn across, say for example, 8, 9, 10 million, 4 million, whatever works out to be in conjunction with what all the other needs are. And the equipment services division will work with those operating departments to buy those vehicles that are above the line. And then, of course, the vehicles that they're replacing will either be taken out of service and auctioned off, or they're already out of service. So, but I will assure you, these are not additional items to the fleet. These are replacements of existing vehicles that we have. So in order to get an additional item to the fleet, the chief of staff for the mayor has to approve each and every vehicle that would be an add-on. So that doesn't happen often. In fact, it doesn't happen at all for the most part. We take vehicles out of the fleet more than we add on to them. And then the last sheet is H2, which is the refuse division. This is all our refuse vehicles, whether it is actual cart or alley trucks that pick up the trash. $3.2 million in critical needs, $4.4 million in needed, 5.5 in desirable. And so again, today we keep approximately 50 trucks on the street every day, and that is a hard thing to do. But just like fire, we are exactly the same. We keep refuse vehicles, the trash trucks themselves, until they just don't run anymore. I will tell you, I believe the oldest truck in the fleet right now is about a 2009, and we're still using it as a backup. As you know, I have a garage that they work 3 different shifts there from 5:30 in the morning until 9:30 every night. And the idea is to keep as many refuse trucks on the street as we can. But again, when the capital committee allocates an amount to refuse trucks, and those refuse trucks again are somewhere in the $500,000 range, if I'm not mistaken. Looking on the list, see if I can grab one off of here real quick. They are about $400,000, $365,800. And so they, relatively expensive vehicles, not quite as expensive as fire, but we'll draw a line and then we'll buy everything that is above those critical items on this list. So let me stop there and see what questions at the end we have on anything that we covered.
Yes, if there's any savings, from the budget, are those reallocated to something else, or is it just added to the next year's budget?
So are you asking if we do a project, are there any of these projects that will cut down on our budget next year?
Yeah, I think you mentioned about the vehicles. You don't think that all the vehicles will be approved. And if so, would there be any savings from those from the vehicle critical needs? Would they be added to next year's budget, or would that revenues be uh allocated to some other portion of the budget in a need category or a critical need category? And would the advisory committee be made aware of that?
So I would tell you theoretically, yes, there's always a savings when we buy a new vehicle, but what you have to remember is generally, in order to reap the whole savings across the board, you need to be caught up with the fleet. And so just like any of these other things, LED lights or HVAC systems, when we go through this, Paul will ask me all these questions, and my facility staff and my equipment services staff during budget hearings about, well, you just received $3 million in vehicles. Well, what did that save us? Did it save us on any parts? But what you got to also keep in mind is we have about 5,000 vehicles in the city's fleet. And so if we replace, 40, 50 vehicles, it does help, but it's not an astronomical difference like if you were going to replace a quarter of the fleet. So yes, there is savings, and we do quantify it and we do work it through with our budgets with Paul. I don't have any information on that here, though.
Yeah, most of the time, I think, as Rich indicated, you're struggling trying to keep, because as you get a year's worth of infusion of funds to buy new equipment, everything else that's not replaced is a year older. So it's oftentimes trying to keep ahead with the limited funds you have for replacements.
And that's again one of the reasons why we keep vehicles till the wheels fall off them, because a brand new vehicle may be running first thing in the morning, and an operator may bump into something, or somebody may bump into them, or hydraulic fails, and so we still have to pick up the trash. And so they'll come back and they'll grab one of the reserve units, and it may run for 2 hours, but long enough to finish their route, and that's what we're hoping for.
Okay. Let me I see one chat here. Alley repair. I did not see this. Where is this located?
Alley repair. So generally repair work, remember, we're talking about capital. So these are generally capital needs. Now there are some things that are mixed in here. Alley repairs would be under the purview of the street department and the street commissioner. That would be a budgetary item. That would be in their budget, unless there's going to be a replacement. And the way the replacements of alleys work is generally the alders would fund the replacement or the repaving of an alley. So that's how we've relatively always done it.
Yeah, and for those who aren't familiar, there's something called a program called the St. Louis Works, which is funded through utility taxes, a portion of the utility taxes which are allocated on a ward basis. That typically, as Rich said, historically, that's been how that's been handled. I noticed, Kayla, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I noticed a lot of vehicle asked on that list from the sheriff's department. Will that be reevaluated with the new leadership now, or are we going to just go through that per rec room that's in there?
No, that's a great question. And so what I will also tell you is yes, it will be. And we have a new commissioner of equipment services. My longtime commissioner retired in November. And what I've asked the new commissioner to do is to sit down with all the directors and all the commissioners and go through the list with a fine-tooth comb. John Hayden is now the sheriff, and so absolutely we will talk with him about what his needs are, and yeah, we will definitely do that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We're running a little long. I want to make sure I keep it on timely. So, but I mentioned this was a lot of material to cover. I've also pulled up on screen the city's website. If you go to, and I'm going to page through it right now, if you can see it, the Budget Division's website under the Capital Committee, you will find under the meeting materials for this meeting, you will find all the items that were attached that we went through this evening. And this is how we'll load them up each time. So you'll be able to reference these items on the website. And I'll stop sharing. And
So
so
Paul,
go ahead.
Could we find the ward capital budget in that same document you just got through showing on the same website?
You're saying the ward capital budgets?
Yeah, the money
Those
that's allocated.
Yes, if you go to that same website and you look at this year's capital budget, it will have the ward budgets in it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, sure. All right. Unless we have any other questions, I really want to thank you for your patience this evening. I know we went a little long. We had a lot of material to cover. We have, again, next week, we will have our first of our detailed meetings, and that's going to go into the streets category and get a little bit more of a deeper dive. I think on the 26th, we're looking at bringing parks and fire in. So just to give you an idea about the next two that we can look into, but we'll go a deeper dive into both of those categories. So without any further delay, again, thank you again for your participation, and we'll see you next week.